All right, so we are going to attempt May-June 2025 paper 22. Now, what you
Yeah.
need to make sure in your exam is that you need to break your answer, your question. You need to break your question first. You need to understand what the examiner is asking from you. You need to
Mhm.
understand what will be the knowledge part, what will be the analysis part, and what will be the evaluation part. Now, see, there's a
Okay.
criteria that the examiner follows to check your answer. It is AO1, that is knowledge and understanding, AO2, that is
Yeah.
analysis, and AO3, that is evaluation and conclusion. Now let's read the
Okay.
first question from section B, question number 2, part A. Explain how Gini coefficient is used to measure income inequality. Now, the first part of this question is asking you what is Gini coefficient
Mhm.
and how is it used to measure income inequality.
Okay.
And consider the relative strength of two economic reasons suggested for such inequality in a low income country. The focus here
Yeah.
is on low income countries. And now the
Yeah.
examiner is asking you that what are the two economic reasons behind income inequality. All right.
Okay.
Now let's move to the answer. Now this is your AO1, knowledge and understanding
Yeah.
of 3 marks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Define Gini coefficient, that is your knowledge part. You have to link it with Lorentz curve. Then you
Okay.
have to explain the concept that if you are closer to zero, this means that there is equal distribution of income going on. If you are away from zero or if you are closer to one, there is uneven distribution of income. This will help you
Okay.
gain 3 marks of knowledge. That is AO1.
Okay. Okay.
How do we move to AO2 analysis when we start giving reasons about income inequality? There are multiple
Mm-hmm.
reasons for income inequality. You have to write only two and you have to explain them properly. So the
Okay.
first one could be lack of employment opportunities. You can say that in a low income country, since businesses are very there are low business are not that much, and in a low income country, people are not that much educated. They are not that much trained. This means that there will be lack of employment opportunities for people living in low income country. Then we have
Yeah.
lack of training, lack of investment, poor infrastructure, geographical and occupational immobility. You have to develop these points. You can
Okay.
also link it with discrimination. You can say that in a low income country, people still discriminate against women. They are still against
Yeah.
women working culture, and women are
Mm-hmm.
not getting equal job opportunities. That is the reason why there is lack of employment opportunities, and some people are getting rich and some people are getting poorer. So, due to lack of
Okay.
employment opportunities, there is this gap of income inequality. All right.
Yeah.
So, once you are done with your analysis, you'll move on to your evaluation and conclusion part. That is of 2 marks, not 3 marks. It's of 2 marks.
Okay.
Now, we have to compare both of the reasons for income inequality and then we have to decide which one is the more crucial one. All right. Now,
Yeah.
I have given you like 5 pointers, but I have compared only two in my evaluation conclusion, and the reasons that I have compared are poor training and lack of job opportunity. So these are the two options that we are going to go compare. So what I have written here, both poor training and lack of job opportunities lead to income inequality. I'm comparing poor training with employment opportunities. So both of them lead to income inequality. But in many countries, even trained people can't find jobs. This is because the economy is not strong enough to create enough employment. So just giving training won't help unless there are actual jobs available. So what I have written
Okay.
is that in some countries, even trained individuals do not have equal job opportunities and they cannot find work. So, just giving training won't help people find jobs. All right. So, this is my first point. Then, also, training programs in poorer countries are often low quality or not linked to market needs. The training program that we have here in low income countries is not very good. Now, for example, that in Pakistan, people are getting trained, but the skill that they are learning is not in demand anymore. Businesses don't
Okay.
want that skill. So
Yeah.
it is often low quality, or it is not linked with market needs. This means
Yeah.
people may still struggle to get good jobs even after being trained. So lack of job
Mm-hmm.
opportunity is often a bigger reason for inequality than poor training. So now this is my conclusion. To sum up, income inequality is caused by many factors, but without enough jobs, even skilled people can remain poor. That's why solving inequality needs more than just training. The country must also create more and better jobs. So I have compared training with employment opportunities, and in the end, I have justified that even if you are a trained individual, there is no guarantee that you will find a job. All right.
Okay.
So this is how you will end your 8 marker. Everything clear up till now?
Yes, it is.
Let's move to part B. Assess the extent to which government policies to redistribute income and wealth are likely to be successful. Now you have learned that there are different government policies that you can use to solve the problem of income inequality, like increasing direct taxes or providing subsidies or transfer payment to people like that. All right. So
Mhm.
AO1 and AO2. Usually in part B, examiner sums up AO1 and AO2 and then gives you marks.
Yeah.
But if we break up
Okay.
AO1 and AO2 further in a 12 marker, you can say that your knowledge part is of 2 marks only, and your
Yeah.
analysis part is of 6 marks. All right. The
Yeah.
remaining 4 marks are allocated for your evaluation and conclusion.
Okay.
Now, according to this question, your AO1, your knowledge and understanding part, requires these things. The first one is the aim
Okay.
of redistribution, where you'll say that
Mm-hmm.
government's objective is to provide for social welfare and to reduce income and wealth inequality distribution, right?
Yeah.
Key government policies to redistribute income and wealth could be minimum wage rates, transfer payment, progressive income tax, provision of essential goods and services the government provides it themselves, and investment in infrastructure. Now, in knowledge part, you only have to define what they are. Like what is meant by
Yeah.
minimum wage rate, what is meant by transfer payment. Then in analysis part, you will explain all this concept and you will give your benefits and drawbacks.
Yeah.
How each policy redistributes income and addresses inequality. The first one,
Mm-hmm.
advantages of each policy. Minimum wage, lift people above poverty line. You know what poverty line is?
Mm-hmm. As in how many people in the in economy's population are in poverty?
Yeah, are in poverty, which means that they cannot afford basic necessities and they are not up to the mark. Their standard of living is very low. So if
Okay.
government imposes a minimum wage to a certain level, don't you
Mm-hmm.
think that people earning below that wage rate will earn more now?
If governments,
If government imposes a minimum wage of, let's say, like 100 rupees and I'm earning 80 rupees per hour, so don't
yeah,
you think that my
yeah,
employer will have
they'll
to pay
get
me
more.
100 now, so my wage level will rise, right?
Yeah.
So minimum wage lifts people above poverty line, the first point. Second
Okay.
advantage is of progressive tax. We know what progressive tax is. Progressive tax is a tax, income tax, tax imposed on income. So
Yeah.
it can also reduce inequality through taxation. And a transfer payment, you know what transfer payment is, means tested and universal benefit. Means tested mean for a specific group of people, universal means for available for everyone. Disadvantages
Oh,
and limitations. Minimum wage may raise unemployment or hurt small businesses by increasing their cost of production. Businesses might shut down, leading to further unemployment in the economy. High progressive taxes may lead to tax avoidance, may lead to tax
mm-hmm.
evasion. People might steal their tax and they don't pay government, may discourage productivity. Transfer
Yeah.
payment will reduce incentive for people to work. Now, these social welfare programs, these NGOs, like for example, there are many NGOs in Pakistan who give food to people, who give rice and other basic necessities to people. Now, the problem here
Mm-hmm.
is that those people who used to work early on for basic necessities, they will stop working because they know
Yeah.
that these NGOs will provide them food and other basic necessities. So people become lazy and they stop working. The last one is
Okay.
government provided services may suffer from poor quality or inefficiency. It's a fact that government services are not very good in quality. Everything clear up till now?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now let's talk about the evaluation part that is of 4 marks. The success of redistribution policies depend on how well they are planned and whether the country has the resources to fund them. Now you see we have talked about many redistribution policies that could help government to achieve these macroeconomic aims and to redistribute income. Now the first point of my evaluation is that the success depends upon how well they are planned and how well they are executed. That is when it will be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you have the funds? How do you get the funds to finance all that? For example, progressive taxes can reduce inequality, but in low income countries, tax collection is often weak and the rich may avoid taxes. Transfer payment help the poor, but if too generous, they may reduce the motivation to work. Now,
Yeah.
the question was linking to a low income country, right? Now, what I
Mm-hmm.
have written here is that usually in low income countries, people don't earn that much. They don't have enough money, right? So,
Yeah.
and usually in low income countries, the taxing system is very pathetic. And it is very easier for consumers and producers to avoid tax, to steal tax, to evade tax, right? So in a country such as low income country, this is not a very effective measure, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If government if there are NGOs or if transfer payments are helping poor, so this might reduce the incentive for people to work as well. So they will be demotivated to go to more to go to work. And then we
Okay.
have minimum wages can lift incomes, but in small businesses or poor economies, they may lead to job losses. Overall, redistribution works best when policies are well targeted, backed by strong institutions, and combined with efforts to grow the economy. So, what is my conclusion here? Government policies can reduce income inequality, yes, but their
Mm-hmm.
success depends upon how well they are designed, how well they are implemented, how well they are executed. In low income countries, administration is very poor, it's very weak, limited budgets, government does not have enough budgets to spend in economy. So a mix of policy should be used. Uh, I have not regarded one policy as the best policy. I am saying that you need to use mix of policies because in a low income country problem will always arise. Everything clear?
Yes, sir.
All right, so this is what question number 2 was. It was a pure theoretical question, so I would suggest to ignore this kind of question in your exam. Don't attempt this question. So then we
It's
have
the
question
second.
number 3. With the
Okay.
help of an
Yeah.
example of each, explain the difference between merit good and demerit good. This is the first part of your question. You have to
Yeah.
give a difference between what merit good and demerit good is. And
Mm-hmm.
consider whether a subsidy given to merit good will always be effective in increasing consumption. And the second
Okay.
part of the question is linking with merit good, which is saying that consider whether if I give subsidy to a merit good, will it be effective? Will it increase its consumption? Now, again, in a part A question, AO1, AO2, AO3, 3 mark for AO1, 3 mark for AO2, and 2 marks for AO3. Now, the question is pretty straightforward. What will be your AO1? Your knowledge and understanding, you have to define merit good and demerit good. You have to give a difference between merit and demerit good. You have to explain it properly. And this is how you will get 3 marks of knowledge and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Then if we go towards AO2, in AO2, you have to analyze. You have to give analysis for 3 marks that whether subsidy will increase the consumption of merit good or not. So you have to explain that subsidy may encourage households to buy. Why? Because whenever a subsidy is provided to a producer, this reduces his cost of production and his supply level rises. Once his supply rises, why is his supply rising? Due to decrease in cost of production. Subsidy will give
Okay.
benefit to a producer by reducing its cost of production, which will increase supply and
Mm-hmm.
shift it rightwards from S to S1, as shown in the diagram. You have to draw the diagram, all right?
Yeah.
But this is a positive part when you will say that yes, subsidy will increase consumption. But what if the product that is being given subsidy is inelastic in nature? For example, government is giving subsidy to a hospital, all right, and government has given a subsidy. Government said that people with broken bones will come to you and you have to reduce your prices for them. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever go to a hospital or whenever I consult a doctor, it's a merit code, right? But if government is giving hospital a subsidy, will I deliberately break my bone and go to a hospital to get myself treated at a cheaper price?
No.
No, right? So certain things have inelastic demand. Certain things have inelastic demand. Even if price level falls, even if it is provided with subsidy, there is no as such increase in consumption of those goods and services due to them being inelastic in nature. Everything clear?
So you're lagging.
I am saying that sometimes a product that is given subsidy is inelastic in nature. So it is not always possible that people will use merit good more if if it is given subsidy. So if it is inelastic in nature, my demand will not increase that much. Everything clear?
Okay.
So the last point is lack of knowledge. You see why the problem of market failure occurs. It occurs due to lack of information. It occurs due to lack of knowledge. Now the best example that we have in front of us is COVID-19. During COVID-19, government, every government in the world, they started giving vaccinations to people for free.
Yeah.
Majority of the governments gave it for free. But again, even if it was provided for
Mm-hmm.
free, most of the people did not get themselves vaccinated. What is the reason behind it? Because there was lack of information that it's poison. It's not a vaccine, it's poison. So there was lack of information, there was lack of
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. Now at that time, even the rich people, but they were illiterate or they were not that much knowledgeable, they did not they did not get their vaccination shot, right? So it is not always the case that subsidy will help increase the
Okay.
consumption or people cannot afford merit good. Sometimes the reason behind lack of consumption is lack of knowledge as well. Everything clear?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this evaluation is very lengthy. You have to make it short and keep it short and keep it easy and short. So what I'm saying here is, while a subsidy can be effective in increasing the consumption of merit good by lowering price, yes, because if price level will fall, demand will extend. So this is a basic law of demand. And making them more affordable,
Mm-hmm.
especially for low income households, it's not a guarantee. All right. For low income
Yeah.
households, people with lack of knowledge, it's not always a guarantee that increase in subsidy will increase their consumption of merit good. If the main reason for underconsumption is lack of information or awareness, a subsidy alone cannot work. Like I told you the example of COVID-19. Consumers may still undervalue the benefits of the good, like education or vaccination, and choose not to consume more of it
Mm-hmm.
despite the lower price. Saying that consumer may still undervalue the benefit of a
Okay.
good, like education or vaccination, even if it is provided with subsidy, and choose not to consume that good or a service. Moreover, if the demand is inelastic,
Mm-hmm.
increase in consumption will be relatively very small even after the price drop. Like I said, that I will not deliberately break my bone to get a plaster on it or to get myself treated because the government has given subsidy to a hospital. All right. This reduces the cost effectiveness of the
Yeah.
subsidy. And that is the reason why subsidy might be ineffective. So subsidy can increase the consumption of merit good, yes, but it is not always effective on its own. So it is not effective on its own. You have to use mix of policies. For it to work well, it should be combined with awareness campaign or information provision to address the root cause of underconsumption. Therefore, a multifaceted approach
Mhm.
is more likely to lead to a significant and sustained increase in the consumption of merit good. So, in my conclusion, what I have written is that subsidy alone is not very effective. You need to use mix of policies. So apart from subsidy, you need to give awareness campaign as well. You need to educate people about the benefits and uses of education and medicine. So you have to use both the
Mhm.
policies together. All right, so a mixed approach should be followed.
Mhm.
Everything clear?
Yeah.
All right, so give me a second. All right.
Yep.
All right, so let's move to part B of this question.
Mhm.
Assess whether fixing a minimum price is likely to be the best policy to reduce the consumption of a demerit good. Now, Kaylin, in a question
Yeah.
like this, where one policy is given by the examiner, and examiner is saying that assess whether this policy is a good policy, you always have to give an alternative approach as well. Like in this question, you will
Yeah.
write about minimum price, but you also have to write about another policy which can be used to solve the problem of demerit good. Do you understand?
Yeah.
All right, so let's move to the answer. All right. In AO1 and AO2, it's of 8 marks, knowledge and understanding and analysis. You have to define minimum price. I will not start my answer by defining demerit good because I have done that in part A. All right. So I cannot repeat my
Okay.
theory again. I will define minimum price
Okay.
first. I will draw the diagram and I will show that there is a surplus in market due to minimum price being implemented. I have positives and I have negatives I have to write. So the first one is that there will be an increase in price level, which will demotivate consumers to consume more of demerit good. There will be surplus in
Mhm.
market as consumers as consumers will not buy more goods. Their demand will contract and supplier supply will extend. So there will be
Yeah.
a surplus in the market. The consumer
Yeah.
surplus will fall, as you can see for yourself. This was the consumer surplus earlier on when the market was operating at its equilibrium. And now, after the imposition of minimum price, the consumer surplus is falling. All right. So you can
Yeah.
write these benefits, but the drawbacks that it will result in illegal markets. Consumers might buy these goods and services at a lower price from producers who are well known to them or who are brand loyal or like you can, it's not brand loyal. You can say that someone who is loyal to a particular person or shop, so they can buy these goods. Mostly when we talk about demerit goods, the demand for demerit good is inelastic in nature. It's a necessity good, it's a habit forming good. So even if price level is rising, it will
Mhm.
not affect this demerit good because it is necessity good in nature. Then we have imperfect information. You see, the problem here is lack of knowledge. People consume alcohol or cigarette due to them
Okay.
being uneducated regarding it, or they have lack of knowledge, information failure regarding the drawbacks, the harmful effects of these goods. So the real problem here is imperfect information, and minimum price will not solve that problem. All right, everything clear?
Okay. Yes, sir.
Then you will write about another policy. You will write about, let's say, indirect taxes or advertising or anyone you want. And then you will draw the diagram and you will write
Mhm.
benefits and drawbacks specific to one of these policies that you are writing about. In analysis, you need to write benefits and drawbacks specific to the point or specific to the policy that you are writing. You will not compare benefits and drawbacks in analysis. You will compare them here. Sorry, here in evaluation. All right. So you can take help. These are the pointers that you can use in your answer. Now you have to write about alternative policy. I would have written about advertisement if I was there in your in this exam,
Mhm.
because advertisement is comparatively easy, and it highlights the root cause for the problem of demerit account. So you can write about advertising campaign, you can write about information failure, you can
Yeah.
write about benefits and drawbacks that it can educate people. You will draw the diagram. And what will be the diagram? The diagram will include decrease in demand, decrease in demand. All right. These are the points that you
Okay.
can use in your answer of AO2. So these campaigns, sorry, aim to bring long-term change and long-term effect in economy, educate people, changing their attitudes towards a particular demerit good, right? But again, it's time-consuming, it's kind of expensive, and
Mhm.
the language that is being used or the way it is being passed on to consumers, this also has a lot of effect on the effectiveness of advertisement. Everything clear?
Yeah.
Now, about evaluation, minimum price can reduce consumption by raising the cost, yes, but they may not work well for highly addictive goods such as people good as people still might buy them. There's also a risk of black market forming if the prices are too high. In contrast, awareness campaign and education can help change consumer behavior. I'm comparing now both of these policies. Consumer behavior in the long run, though they may take time and show results, and depends on how well they are done. So minimum price can be
Mhm.
effective in the short run, but for a long-term approach, for a longer term, you need to go for advertising. You need to educate people. You need to tell them how the harmful effects of demerit code. So in conclusion,
Yeah.
fixing a minimum price can help reduce use of demerit goods. Yes, minimum price can reduce the consumption of demerit good, but only in short term, especially in short term. However, its success depends upon how addictive the good is and how people respond. A combined approach using price controls with education and enforcement is more likely to reduce harmful consumption effectively. So you need to use mix of policies. For short-term approach, you can go for minimum price, but for a longer time, you see, you cannot always impose minimum price in your markets, right? You need to remove it someday. So you need to be ready that once you remove them, people don't
Yeah.
start consuming demerit good again. And how will they stop consuming demerit good
Yeah.
for a longer time? Through advertisement, through knowledge, through education. So you need to use both of them together, so that in short run, people are discouraged due to increase in price level, and in the long run, people are discouraged due to information that was being passed to them during that short run time period. Everything clear?
Yeah. Mhm.
All right. Let's move to another question of section. Now we're moving towards section C, all right?
Okay. So.
Now, with the help of a diagram, explain what is meant by circular flow of income in an open economy. Open economy is an economic sector in which international trade is involved, right? International trade is involved, and you have to you import and export goods and services. So, what is meant by circular flow of income in an open economy? This is the first
Mhm.
part of your question. And consider the extent
Yeah.
to which it can explain economic growth in such an economy. How circular flow of income can be used, and or how circular flow of income explains the extent to which economic growth in an economy. All right, so now let's move to the
Yeah.
answer. All right, so AO1 and AO2, I have compared both of them in this question. So you have to start by defining injection, withdrawal, autonomous,
So
and
your voice
induced.
is lagging a lot.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can. It keeps going though.
All right, so you will start by defining injection, withdrawal, autonomous, and induced. All right. Then you will talk about what is
Yeah.
open economy. It's a four sector open economy. You will draw this diagram. You will explain the diagram. All right. And you will reach to this multiplier formula and equilibrium of the macroeconomic equilibrium. So this is all your knowledge and analysis part, and you can take help from here as well. All right, for your
Okay.
AO1 and AO2. Everything clear up till now?
Yes. So,
So the question was focusing on economic growth. Now we know what economic growth is, that whenever there's a multiplier effect in economy, whenever aggregate expenditure is more in economy and people are spending in economy. Give me a second. Hello, Kaden. Yeah, can you hear me now?
yes, I can.
Yes. So I was saying that economic growth is when there is multiplier
So it's
effect in
lagging
your
again.
economy. Sorry, sorry, Kiran, what you saying? Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we were going through the concept of economic growth. So economic growth is always when there's an increase in actual point, or whenever there's an increase in aggregate demand or aggregate supply. Now, the point here, what I have written, that if injection is greater than withdrawal, if my injection is greater than my withdrawal, there will be a positive economic growth. Yes, because we are investing more in the economy, and we are taking out less out of the economy. And if your withdrawal is greater than your injection, your economic growth will fall, right? So you have to explain this, that
Okay.
how you will get economic growth and how will your economic growth fall. So you can take help from here from these pointers, all
Okay.
right? Now
Mm-hmm.
about the evaluation and conclusion. It's of 2 marks, not 4 marks, 2 marks. A circular flow model helps explain basic income and output relationships, but it is very simplified because it assumes that all injections are directly leading to spending, but in reality, leakages like inflation, saving, or import can weaken the impact. Also, it doesn't account for external shocks like oil price changes for global recession, which affect open economies. So, while the model shows the idea clearly, it doesn't fully capture the complexities of real world growth. Now, see, it's a diagram, it's a web diagram in which we are just trying to create an
Mm-hmm.
equilibrium of income and expenditure. But usually, the circular flow of income diagram, this ignores the real world problems. This ignores the real world complexities. This ignores the future trends. So, in conclusion, the circular flow of income is useful for understanding. Yes, it is useful to understand how different sectors work, how government works, how firms work, how banks work. However, its power to explain the real economic growth is limited unless combined with more advanced methods, more advanced models, and real world data. Now, you have to use real world data as well to get a correct answer out of circular flow of income. Do you understand?
Oh, okay.
Clear,
Because
Kaylin?
this one thing when we were doing like a weekly test is like these classes in school. Can you hear me, sir?
Sorry, can you repeat yourself?
No. Yeah, what I was saying is we have these weekly tests in school, which like these class tests. And there was this one question where I used like a real world example. I think it was about an airline industry. And my sir was like, you can't use those, like I'll lose marks for them. I'll not lose marks, but I won't be marked for them. So can I or can I not?
You cannot give it is not allowed to write a brand name in your exam. I mean, it is allowed, but is
Mhm.
not considered to be a good thing if you write brand name in your exam. But the real world examples, you can write real world examples, not an issue.
Okay.
And you can talk about Russia Ukraine war, you can talk about COVID-19, it's completely fine.
Okay.
All right, question number 4B, assess whether supply side policy is the most effective way to achieve long run economic growth. Now, again, we have to achieve long run economic growth. One policy is a supply side policy that is given by examiner. Now, question number 4, part B. You have to give one alternative policy of your own, all right?
Yeah.
So, you'll start by defining supply side policy. You will write benefits, you will write drawbacks, the basic benefits and drawbacks that you have in your notes. That supply side it's a long term policy and it will help achieve long run economic growth, and it gives increases the potential saves from hyperinflation, this and that. However, it requires funds, it's a long term approach, and it requires a lot of resources and energy. So these are the points that you can use in your answer. As for alternative policy, you can go for fiscal policy or monetary policy. Fiscal policy is a better option because it's easier, right? So you'll go for fiscal policy. Demand side policies, you will use this explanation. You will use benefits and drawbacks from your notes, which are very simple. That it increases the employment level, it will increase GDP, bring multiplier effect. However, it will increase inflation in economy. It's kind of it's a bit harmful for economy as well, if it's closer to potential and this and that, the basic concept. Now, this is very simple.
Okay.
AO1 and AO2 part. Do you have any problem in this?
No, sir. Uh, no, I don't.
Now, evaluation. Now, see, I will compare supply side and fiscal policy now. Supply side policies can support long run growth by increasing productivity, but they can often take years to show result and can be expensive. In poorer countries, limited budgets and weak institutions can reduce their effectiveness. In contrast, demand side policies like government spending or interest rate cuts, I'm linking this point with monetary policy, or interest rate cuts
Yeah.
can boost faster, especially during recession. However, they not be sustainable in long run. Now, what I'm trying to say is that supply side policies are not short term policies; they are effective in the long run.
Hmm.
Whereas
Yeah.
fiscal policy is effective in the short run because they are, faster and they bring fast effect. So supply side
Okay.
policies are useful for long term growth, but they work best with a combination of short term demand side measure. Now, for example, Kalen, I buy a car and that car can travel up to 1000 kilometer per hour. The speed is 1000 kilometer per hour. So a new
Mm.
car, a new potential, a new engine, new capacity, but I'm still driving my car at 50 kilometer per hour. So do you think
Yeah.
it is giving me any good, it is doing me any good to buy such an expensive car and such an advanced machine, and I am still not utilizing it properly? Is it beneficial for society or me or my country?
No, sir, it's not.
No. So if you are increasing your potential, you need to have some policy that will increase your actual as well. In conclusion,
Okay.
supply side policies, yes, they can help achieve long run economic growth, but they are not always effective on their own. You have to use a balanced approach. You need to boost your aggregate demand as well. You need to increase your aggregate demand as well, so that the economic growth it grows continuously. Aggregate demand is also
Okay.
rising, aggregate supply is also rising, so it gives you a continuous growth. Everything clear?
Okay. Yes, sir.
Now the last question. Explain what is meant by protectionism. First part of the question. And consider the effectiveness of using tariff as a method of protectionism. What is protectionism? And benefits of tariff. Only tariff. You have to write your answer specific to tariff. All right.
Okay.
So define protectionism. It protects domestic industry from free trade. Type of protectionism, tariff, quota, embargo, and all that. Your focus should be on tariff. You will explain tariff. You will draw the diagram. You will write benefits and drawbacks that you have in your book as well, in your notes as well, and you can take help from here. That the benefits
Okay.
are that people will shift to domestically manufactured goods and local businesses will boom and local businesses will be supported. However, and if the demand is elastic, people will stop consuming that good. However, if demand is inelastic, government can earn tax revenue. There could be a problem of retaliation. This could result in cost push inflation and all as well. So these are the points that you can use for your AO2. Conclusion: it's of 2 marks, not 4 marks. The success of tariff depends on price elasticity of demand for imports. So the question asks that whether tariff will be successful or not. So it simply depends upon the PED of the good that you are importing. So the success of tariff depends upon PED of imports. If demand is inelastic, tariff won't do you any good. They will not be that much effective, but they can help you earn tax revenue. Also, protectionism can
Okay.
lead to trade wars. There could be retaliation. There could be fight with other countries, which may hurt our exports
Yeah.
as well. Long term reliance on protection can reduce efficiency and innovation, especially if industries become dependent. In conclusion, tariff may help protect domestic industries, yes, but only in the short run. They are not a long term
Okay. So
solution. So you need to improve yourself. You need to improve the quality of your product, that people stop importing those goods and services and start consuming from domestically manufactured goods, right? They are
yes, sir.
most effective when used temporarily alongside with the policies to improve competitiveness, like investment, skills, and productivity. Everything clear?
Yeah.
Now, the last question: assess whether assess whether free trade is always better than a policy of protectionism in developing economy that wishes to trade internationally. The question is asking that tell me one thing, whether free trade is always better than a policy of protectionism for a developing economy, an economy like Pakistan or Bangladesh that wishes to trade internationally. If an economy like Pakistan or Bangladesh who wants to trade internationally, is free trade better than the policy of protectionism? So the question simply is a fight between free trade and protectionism. Now,
Mm-hmm.
define developing economy, the basic knowledge part. Give benefits and drawbacks of free trade written in the notes. You can take help from here as well. All right. Link
Yeah.
drawbacks with protectionism. So the drawbacks of free trade are the benefits of protectionism. And the benefits of protectionism, oh sorry, and the drawbacks of protectionism are the benefits of free trade. So you have to write benefits and
Yeah.
drawbacks like that. So these are the paragraphs that you can take help from. All right. A free trade, numerous advantages like larger
So
market availability of comparative advantage and all that. Everything clear up till now?
yes, sir.
As for evaluation, free trade gives developing countries access to larger market and cheaper imports, yes, which can raise living standard, yes. However, if local industries are weak, they may not survive global competition. This can lead to unemployment and reliance on import. In such cases, temporary protectionism like tariff or subsidies can help infant industries grow. Now I'm comparing free trade with protectionism. How protectionism is better than free
Mhm.
trade or how free trade is better than protectionism. So I'm saying that tariff and subsidies, they can help infant industries grow. But if protection is lasting too long, it may lead to inefficiency and higher prices for consumers. The success of either policy depends on the country's stage of development and how well policies are managed. So, in conclusion, free trade is not always better for developing countries. A mix of short-term approach and long-term approach, like protectionism and free trade, both of them should be followed at the same time, so that this allows
Mhm.
them to build local strength while preparing for global competition. Now, in the short term, you can implement protectionism to support your local industries. Once they grow, remove the protectionism barrier so that they can go international and they can fight internationally, so that it will boost your economy. Everything clear, Kaylin?
Yes, it is.